Hi, welcome to Baker Rangers. Welcome to Baker Rangers Movie Talk. This is a place where we talk about movies, some movies that we love, some movies we never heard about, maybe a little obscure, and we have a good time. Today we are talking one of the greatest trilogies in cinematic history, Lord of the Rings, and I'm here with my guest all the way from the UK, 2 o'clock in the morning, almost 2:30 now. Tai Tiger, how you doing?
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
No problem. Thanks for coming on. I think it's ironic that we are talking about Lord of the Rings. It seems like when I have British guests, we talk about something that's by British author or or whatnot.
Yeah,
Um, but I think J.R. Tolkien's British, wasn't he?
yeah, I don't actually know.
Maybe
Maybe?
he's American, and maybe I'm just saying he's British. I don't know. In the movie, everybody's British. It seems like.
Yeah, literally.
But yeah. So I saw the first one, Fellowship of the Ring, when it came out in theater. Like it came out in 2001. I was a sophomore in high school. Like that shows you how old I am. I'm old
Fair enough.
because the movie's 21 years old.
Yep.
But just kind of tell me about your first time watching the movie, seeing it either for the first time or um, if you've read the books before, or just let me know your experience.
So, okay, so I'm one of the youngest people in the Zio to Hero community. I turn 24 next month.
Oh
Right.
man, you're
So
young.
I must have been about 10, 11, and my mum's got her friends over and stuff, and I'm talking to one of them about a book that I'm currently still writing almost 13 years later, and he tells me that one of my characters seems like Aragorn. And I'm a 10-year-old kid. I'm so confused what he's talking about. Who's Aragorn? Question mark above my head. So that weekend, he comes back to my mum's house with the entire trilogy, and I think we watched all three films in 2 days. And I absolutely loved every single minute of it. I was hooked onto that screen like no tomorrow. I absolutely love like medieval stuff, and but I also love fantasy, and it just combined the pair of them together. And it was just absolutely fantastic. I was just a 10-year-old kid glued to that screen like no tomorrow.
Did you watch the theatrical versions or the extended versions?
We actually watched the extended versions,
Oh,
which
okay.
I'm really glad about.
So that's why it took you 2 days, because
Oh yeah,
I was going to catch up on them, and I got the extended version, and I got watched started to watch Fellowship of the Ring, but the extended version is 3 hours and 46 minutes.
oh yeah.
I was 2.5 hours into it, thinking, "Oh, this should be almost over." No, I had an hour left. I'm like, man. But um, there's a lot of good content in the extended ones. I like the theatrical ones, even though when I first saw the Two Towers, I wasn't as big a fan with that as I was with Fellowship of the Ring. But the
Yeah,
extended
of course.
version, I think, puts a lot more things into context,
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
it's much better.
Yeah, yeah. Because I remember rewatching them, and I'm sat there thinking to myself, 'cause especially with Two Towers, because like you said, it doesn't the theatrical version isn't as, I don't want to say decent, but it just isn't as oomph to it. And I
Yeah,
remember rewatching, I'm like, hang on a minute, there's scenes missing, and that's when I found out there's actually an extended
yeah,
version. I was like, right, that's why this doesn't seem as long. Yeah,
yeah,
I think it does help.
yeah. Because normally with the second act of a movie, uh, or a trilogy, that's typically where like the majority of your action is. But all the
Yeah.
action in Lord of the Rings is in the Return of the King.
Yes.
But originally, it was going to be one book, and so, but it was going to be one really big book. So um, the publisher basically forced him to split it up into three books.
I mean, it is such a long
Yeah,
story, isn't
yeah,
it? And sometimes longer stories can be harder to digest. So it makes sense that it's kind of split. Makes it easier for some people.
yeah. So I think originally Peter Jackson was going to do it, both that and whenever he did the Hobbits, was going to do two movies, but he got the studio to hop on board to do three, which works for
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings. It did not work for The Hobbit, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
I agree with that definitely, because with Lord of the Rings, there's so many different storylines being told at once. Obviously, you've got them destroying the ring being
Yep.
one, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, and then you've also got the two other hobbits doing whatever they're doing with the trees. All three different storylines, and that's a lot of stuff to take in for some people. And obviously, having it split into three films does kind of help, and also kind of gives you a bit of time to digest certain things that
Mhm.
happen, because there's a dramatic difference from the first film to the third film. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, there
Like
is.
story wise, so like it helps, I guess.
Yeah, because even though the movies don't take place in like a horribly long period of time, there's a
Mm.
lot of stuff that happens. Again, it's
Oh yeah, definitely.
a bigger story. Um, it's more focused, I think, on the characters than the Hobbit is. Even though in
Yeah.
the Hobbit he had to like make that one elf that's not in the book, and then do the whole love triangle thing. But um, the Evangeline Lilly's character in the Hobbit, um, she's not a character in the book, and
Yeah.
because in the Hobbits movies, she had like a love triangle thing going on with Legolas and one of the dwarfs.
Yep.
But that didn't happen, and which is weird. Not weird, but when she signed on to do the Hobbit, one thing she specifically uh, did not want was a love triangle, and that's exactly what they did to her character.
Yep.
Yeah, but even in Lord of the Rings with Aragorn and oh, what's her name? The lady elf. That wasn't in the
Oh yeah,
books
the high
either.
elf. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it wasn't.
there's
No.
yeah, there's
Which they
no
actually played heavily on, if you think about it, especially throughout the last half of the second film and then the third film. It's like a big dominant force in Aragorn's like drive to do anything, and it's not really anything in the books.
yeah, like I don't know what like I guess Peter Jackson just feels like there has to be some sort of romance in a movie. Maybe it's he doesn't think it
I
might do
mean,
as well if there's no
yeah, because in the main story of Lord of the Rings, obviously you've got Frodo and Sam. There isn't going to be any female romance there because they're trying to destroy
yeah,
the ring.
yeah.
And then with the two young other hobbits, they're not going to have much of a love interest either because there's lack of female characters, blah blah. So I guess the only real characters you could give some form of love interest to is Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli.
Which
And obviously they're going to go with Aragorn.
yeah, because I think with Gimli, like dwarf uh women look just like dwarf men.
Yeah,
So
they made that joke, didn't they? I think it's in
yeah,
the second one when they're on the. Is it the second one that
it
they
might have been the
run
first
away?
one whenever they were in the mines of Moria, possibly, or
Yeah, they
maybe
also
it was in
make
the second one.
Gimli tells the blonde woman who ends up fighting in the war. He tells her that females look just like the men and grow beards and
Yeah,
stuff, and Legolas makes the joke because Legolas and Gimli are quite comical.
yeah. But I prefer movies not to shoehorn romance because I just feel like it's overdone where
Yeah,
we feel like it has to be and a lot of times it's a false idea of relationships and stuff because typically they'll make a big deal out of that in a movie and then like if there's a sequel like they'll basically dismantle it or like in a TV show eventually by the end of the series they're not in a relationship anymore so
yeah.
I think it's just a little overdone in Lord of the Rings it doesn't bother me as much as it did in The Hobbit because
It depends on if it feels forced though,
yeah
because like in The Hobbit it felt forced. In
yeah
Lord of the Rings you could let it
yeah
slide because they kind of gave an explanation of Aragorn and the woman elf, and
yeah
it kind like she was very sweet with him and stuff. And if you look at like everything he sacrificed, he doesn't have much of a past. He doesn't have a life to go back to once the war's over. You can kind of understand why they did it. They had to give some drive to why he wants to be such a the best king. The king that he wants to be. So it makes sense.
well and Lord of the Rings like the trilogy is a little more elegant like the way the movies are presented
Yeah, of course.
it just the mood was kind of right for that in
Yeah,
that
of
movie
course. Yeah.
with the Hobbit. I guess this could be like the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit um, review, but in the Hobbit, because originally it was going to be Guillermo del Toro was going to direct it, and they were going to do 2 movies, but they decided to do 3. And so they kept a lot of his influences in there, but like a lot of those influences to me didn't mesh well with the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So it just
Yeah,
looked different, like it almost looked like a different world.
it does though.
Yeah,
There's a different feel
yeah,
between Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And okay, yeah, they're technically different in the sense of The Hobbit's more of a thief sort of fantasy, where Lord of the Rings is action and war, and you know it's race against the clock sort of scenario. But it's the same world. It's got the same characters in it. Legolas is in all the movies. Gandalf's in all of them, but they do feel separated.
yeah.
They do absolutely. They don't feel connected
Yeah,
at all.
like I understand that it was made like 15 years or 14, 12, 11, 10, something. It was it like 2013 maybe when the first Hobbit movie? I don't know.
I believe it was around there.
Yeah. So it was a little over 10 years. So the technology was there to do things differently. But
Yes, of course. Yeah.
and then they elected to record it in like 120 frames per second or something like that,
Mm,
90 or 120, which is unheard of at that time. So I'm still kind of unheard of at this time. So a lot of people didn't like it because it was like too jarring because it was like I don't know.
yeah.
Um, so
I also think when it comes to Lord of the Rings, if you think about the CGI that they used back then for 2001 to 2003 trilogy, it was actually stunningly gorgeous. I think Lord of the Rings is phenomenal to this day, but because The Hobbit is so CGI heavy, it breaks that, like, oh my god, this looked real sort of s, because the orcs and all that in Lord of the Rings, you could tell it was makeup and aesthetics and stuff like that, but it plays along with them trying to make it look realistic, like a lot of stuff did back then. But with The Hobbit, it just breaks that, like, oh my god, this looks real, because you could so tell this it's so CGI heavy, almost too much in some cases,
yeah,
especially when majority of the characters are like dwarfs.
yeah, yeah, and the cinematography was just like quite a bit different. Then again, a lot of that might have to do with the advancement in cinematography because they filmed Lord of the Rings on film
Yep.
because they filmed that in '99. I think they filmed all 3 movies together in like 9 months. Um, it was like probably the first time that's ever like they've had sequels where they filmed sequels at the same time or did
Yeah,
them
that's
back
right.
to back. But it was the first time like a whole thing was done at once. But and yeah, The Hobbit just went digital. I kind of say they George Lucased it. Um, like with the because it is technically a prequel of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that's
Um,
very true.
and yeah, just way too much. And with like Lord of the Rings, you can some of the CG, especially in Return of the King, might not hold up as much as it does today. But um, Golem, like you'll see Golem like barely in Fellowship of the Ring, but
Yeah.
whenever he comes back out in the Two Towers, well, I guess they did have a year to kind of perfect it because it came out 2002. So, because the CG for the dark, shadowy Golem, you can clearly tell is just CG all over.
Oh yeah, yeah,
But when Golem came in Two Towers, it's like it fits into the scene. It's CG because something can't look like that and be able to move
yeah. Of
the
course.
way he does. But it works, and I think the magic of who's the voice of Golem? Um, just completely forgot his name. He's uh he's in everything now.
Yeah, he's the main ape in the Rise of Planet of the Apes trilogy.
Yeah,
Um, He in Black Panther, Age of Ultron. Yeah, he's a good actor actually. I quite liked him as a Gollum. I think he did a good job.
Andy Serkis.
That's it.
But he also directed Venom 2. So maybe his directing
Yeah.
skills.
Just keep the acting.
Yeah.
But that might be best for him.
His I think his first directorial debut was Netflix's version of Mowgli.
Oh right, yeah.
I started to watch that and it was just, I don't know, it wasn't working for me. I do like the Disney remake of Jungle Book, but maybe I need to give um, Andy Serkis's Mowgli movie a chance.
Maybe. But yeah, as Gollum, I think he did absolutely brilliant,
Mhm.
especially for the fact that technically he's playing two different characters. And when it comes to, I believe it's near the end of Two Towers, when Smeagol's arguing with Gollum, and the Sam and Frodo are like catching up to him, and he's arguing with himself, and the way that the camera works and it's focusing on Smeagol, then it switches to Gollum. That's one of my favorite scenes in Two Towers. When I was younger, it made me laugh, but as I've grown up, I've like learned to respect the way that they
Yeah,
did that.
like when
It's
you can,
just really clever.
yeah, the way like you can talk to yourself, but like they framed it as if it was like two creatures
Yeah,
there at the
like
same time.
two, yeah, arguing with each other is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not like they do with like mirrors, where like your good guy persona is like outside the mirror
yeah.
and the bad guy's in the mirror, and they just kind of cut back and forth. Spider-Man does that. It happens in The Boys, which you haven't seen yet, but season 3.
A lot of stuff does it. It's
Yeah,
in Charmed, it's in Smallville. Yeah, a lot of TV shows kind of use that camera shot of you can kind of see the person's behind their
yeah,
head, and then you can see that evil or whatever they're talking to through the mirror. A lot of especially TV shows, because I guess it's cheaper to do it
yeah,
that way.
yeah. Because you can
Um,
cheat, because you can have one
yeah,
camera here, one camera there, and then you can just do little, cuts
yeah,
here and
exactly.
there. But I
Um,
believe Andy Serkis like did both versions at the same time, like where
that's
he
mad.
just, I believe so. Did, don't quote me on it, but I believe, because he's that talented anyway, where he
Oh
can
yeah.
play both voices and he'll look one way and then he'll look the next way to play the and just kind of talk to himself that way.
And the scene when he's killing the fish and he's singing to himself just before the humans get in. That
And he's
scene's
like slapping the
priceless.
fish.
Yeah. It's rather like, the only way I can describe it is adorable. But when you see him killing the fish, then it gets really morbid.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, because he's being playful and then he's just killing fish. Well, and
Yeah,
it kind of like they say, like with serial killers, like one of the first signs is like killing animals when you're a kid. And even
yeah.
though Golem, I don't know how old he is, but he's probably, you know, midlife time, 50,
Well,
60
yeah.
years
I was
old.
gonna say he's Gollum
Maybe
in
longer.
Hobbit, and he's Gollum in The Hobbit,
Oh,
which
yeah,
is Bilbo's younger days, and obviously he's older and
it's true.
frail by the time he's getting on in the original trilogy. That I'm just going to call it. So he's Gollum for quite a long time.
Yeah, so he's probably over 100 years old.
Yep.
Because I think between The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, I think it was 50 years between the two.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. Um, Even though Gandalf looks older in The Hobbit, well, of course he's older, so,
Yeah, of
I don't
course.
want people getting, well, he's an older actor, blah, blah. Yeah, I know. But they do have de-aging technology, and they de-aged Christopher Lee in The Hobbit, but they didn't de-age the character that was in the whole movie. Um,
Yeah, makes no sense.
but it is what it is. But that's not like that stuff can be overlooked, because again, uh, there's other stuff I don't actually care as much. Sorry, I am talking over my words about the Hobbit. But see, this is where those moments where I just start rambling and then I forget where I was. I told you this was gonna happen. Like, it happens.
Oh yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and cut to a promo for Mark on the Zero to Hero Network. He's the Red Cornish Ranger. He is having a comic book. I don't know how to explain it, but like
comic book audio
drama.
drama. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's I think
yeah,
that's the best way you can word that.
yeah. So he's merging Star Trek and Doctor Who together. It's going to be awesome. So here, make sure I need to go to the right one before I do this. Okay. All right. So here is it.
Time, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the TARDIS. Its continuing mission.
Doctor, what are you doing?
I'm trying to set the mood, Pond.
Set the mood for what?
For the new podcast, Pond. Don't you remember? They're reading about our adventures in that dimension with the ships and the android.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. It was fun. In an extremely dangerous kind of way.
See, Pond? Even Rory gets it. Oh, never mind.
Star Trek, Doctor Who, A Simulation Squared will be an 8-part adventure produced by the Red Cornish Ranger and starring many of the partners and friends of the Zero to Hero Network. Chapter 1, coming soon.
All right, and we're back talking about Lord of the Rings. We kind of got I kind of got sidetracked at the end of that. So you kind of mentioned some of your favorite parts, like with Golem.
Yep.
And so you saw it when you were like 10. You said.
Yep. Yeah, I
Were,
was looking.
were there any parts that kind of like scared you while you were watching it, or?
I wouldn't say scared, but I think when it comes to watching the first one and you've got the scene when Frodo puts on the ring and he can see all the race, like their actual, like what they really look like, that didn't scare me, but it definitely kind of like put me back a bit, like, whoa, okay, that's not cool, sort of like feeling. And especially when they stabbed him and they hurt Frodo properly, that definitely took me back a minute. Like I kind of took that as a serious, like, okay, this film's getting like, hang on a minute, this is getting serious now. I was still 10. I was watching Power Rangers and I was watching other stuff. I didn't I didn't see how things serious. And then when that scene happened, I was like, whoa, okay, that's kind of freaky. The dragon that one of the I don't know if it's actually a dragon or wraith dragon or whatever it's called, but it's the big white dragon thing that one of them rides. It's really ugly looking. That thing freaked me out a little bit too. Don't know why, but it always did.
Yeah, well, it's out in the air, and you don't know, it can get you at any
Yeah.
minute. But yeah, and for the other one, Frodo puts the ring on, thinking he's just going to disappear. But the thing is, they can feel the ring, especially when somebody puts it on. It's like they're stronger. I don't know if they're stronger or not. So he puts it on, thinking he's going to be able to get away, and then they just kind of turn white. You can see like
Yeah.
what they looked like when they were men. Because they were the original kings that got their rings, weren't
Yeah.
they?
Yeah, they're the original. Because if you
The
listen
men.
to yeah, if you listen to the woman speaking at the beginning, she says that, like, these rings went to here. Yeah, they're the kings that I mentioned.
Yeah. So you can see a little more of their features because they're not all cloaked. And he's still looking at him and coming right at him. So it's like, he can't get out of this one. Luckily, Aragorn, I guess they're afraid of fire. So he had the torch scaring them off. But, yeah, again, I was 14. It was November 2020. I want to say 2021, but it's 2001. See, I don't even understand the concept of early 2000s now. That's how old I am. Like, that was a long time ago. Yeah. So I was 15 when it came out. So all my friends, they read the books. Like, they were really big bookworms. They read the Lord of the Rings books. The Harry Potter books up to that point, I think, were only the first 3. Because when the first Harry Potter movie came out in 2001, I believe there was only 3 books that came out by the time the first one came out. The last book didn't come out of Harry Potter until 2000. I want to say 5. I was working my first job at a video store. That makes me feel old. But yeah, so they kind of got me and my brother. We both were in the same grade together, even though we're not the same age. We're like 2 years apart, but we had the same group of friends. So we would go to the movies as often as we could. Little small town, we only had a 1-screen theater, so we only watched what was in the theater. And luckily, all 3 Lord of the Rings came out in that theater. The first 2 Star Wars, Episode 1, Episode 2, did not, so I had to watch those in another town when those came out. Kind of wish I did. I would have watched them a lot more in theaters, but I only seen Episode 1, Episode 2 once each. But I enjoyed it. Like, when I saw the first time, seeing Fellowship of the Ring, and then we again saw the 2 towers, and that was okay. I think there wasn't as much going on. It was more exposition. The 2 towers is more of like explaining where we're going from here. Then,
it's like a bridge, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's just we're up here. It's kind of plateaued. Well, actually, because with Return of the King, I was really excited for the Return of the King, because I really want, because I didn't read the books. I didn't like reading. I still kind of don't, so I don't read as much as I need to.
I've never read the Lord of the Rings books. I have read like the Harry Potter books, Hunger Games, that sort of stuff. I have read a lot, but when it comes to Lord of the Rings, I've never really thought about it. I think because I like the movie so much, and I know the books are gonna be better. I don't want to ruin. I don't want to ruin my love for the actual films, because it's one of my favorite trilogies. So I'm just like, I don't kind of want to ruin it. I did. You asked me about scary scenes. Now, they didn't scare me, but I did get my ex-girlfriend to watch them, and she really freaked out on, I think it's the 3rd film, where Frodo's kidnapped by the orcs, and Sam has to go save him, and you've got the orc with the knife, and he says to Frodo that he's going to gut him. My ex-girlfriend got really freaked out over that specific orc, because he looked really creepy and just like he stood over Frodo, and she got really freaked out about that one particular scene.
Yeah, I think that was at the beginning of the 3rd movie, I believe, because they got kidnapped at the end of the 2nd one. I think that's what it was. And then they got away. Or was it? Maybe it was something else. No, that was Merry and Pip. That was Merry. Because Merry and Pip got away at the beginning of the 3rd one.
Yeah, because then that's when they run into the forest.
Or 2nd one. Yeah, 2nd one.
Yeah, that's when they meet the tree people. Yeah. Which I always found funny, because they take so long to have a conversation. I just love that. That's such like a unique character.
Well, and that tree also is what's that guy's name? the guy who plays Gimli. He's the voice of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't actually know that.
She's been in a lot of good things. He's
No, to
been in the
MD.
Indiana Jones. He's been in Sliders, the show Sliders. I want to say Paul Reese Davis, but I don't know if Paul was right. Let me look that up. I need to get my story straight before I start these things.
I always loved the little relationship Legolas and Gimli build throughout the movies.
Paul Reese Davies. That's what it is. Yeah. He's been around a time or two.
Yeah.
John Reese Davies. Sorry, John Reese Davies. Not Paul. Paul is incorrect. It's John Reese Davies. Yeah.
Yeah, I've always loved Legolas's and Gimli's little relationship.
Yeah.
I think.
No, go ahead.
Because I think one of my favorite jokes is I think it's during the second film near the end when they're all fighting and stuff, just before Gandalf shows up. Aragorn has to throw Gimli, and Gimli just says, "Don't tell the elf." Like, I love that. That's brilliant.
Yeah, because in the first one, I was watching when they were in the mines. I guess Legolas throws him. He says, "You don't throw me," and then right before he saves him by holding his beard and stuff. Yeah, and so I liked how they did where as they're developing their hatred for each other, there's a lot of inside stuff that you kind of get to grow, and you can just see it where the relationship from hating each other because Gimli he doesn't trust elves, he hates elves, and them becoming friends even though they still are competitive with each other and start counting kills and all that kind of stuff.
But with you've got Merry and Pippin who are just very joyful and then finally learn what it means, to actually do something in the world. And then you've got Frodo and Sam who are best friends, and then obviously that gets disturbed by Gollum or Smeagol, whoever you want to call him. So it's nice to have a duo that's a bit more different, and the fact that they are competitive and it is a little jokey, it's just a little nice little difference with all the other little duos that are going on. So
Yeah, because
I like it.
Because these are kind of like the ultimate buddy films because, there's 3 sets of buddies throughout this trilogy.
And again, going back to the romance thing, that's why I'm okay with Aragorn having that romantic side, because everybody else is like buddy cop sort of.
Somebody everywhere. Has somebody. He needs somebody.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It does it about romance, just different.
Yeah, and it works because it's not a big part. Well, even though in Hobbit that wasn't a big part of the movie, but that it was kind of like an eyesore in that movie. It wasn't, because it made sense because he had there was that scene with him and the main elf. What's his name? But that guy, and I guess he's at the tomb of his mother. His mother died saving his people or whatnot, and wanted to seek asylum in what's that? I was about to say Rivendell. I don't think that's what it's called. Is that what it's called?
No, Rivendell is in.
Oh yeah, Rivendell. Yeah, Rivendell. I was thinking Riverdale. That's something.
I was gonna say that sounds almost correct.
Yes, Riverdale is the Archie one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, hang on a second.
Serious, Rivendell. So it is Rivendell. Yeah, and so he doesn't really know his mom very well, and so he's got that. So to have a female character involved with him, in that way, and it kind of gives him a little more motivation because he just doesn't care.
Yeah, he goes. If you watch him in the first film and you see how, I don't want to use the word angsty, but I guess angsty is kind of the best word to use. Just how much crap he doesn't give. Then obviously he wants to get rid of the the One Ring and stuff. So he joins the Fellowship and everything. So by the time the end of the third film happens, he's gone through gaining the king's sword, or the sword of the kings, whatever it's called. He made the deal with the ghost, which is actually a very cool scene. Actually, I do like the scene when he summons the ghost army. That's kind of cool. And then he obviously becomes the king that he feels like he's worthy to be. Having her next to him just is kind of like a nice little send off for his character.
Yeah, like with the Hobbit, with Legolas, I don't think Legolas is in the Hobbit book, so they added him in there just for nostalgia purposes to kind of help connect the movies. But like there wasn't anything about any of the characters that you care enough about, because the dwarf that she was having a thing with, he was just like, he wasn't even one of the main dwarves. He was just kind of just their dwarf. So like it wasn't necessary.
See, that's the issue with the Hobbit films, isn't it? There's no connection for the characters, and Legolas, since this is a prequel, because Gandalf is pretty much the same all the way through, pretty much. Even when he becomes the white, he's still the same person. He's still funny and charming and a badass. But with Legolas, he's at the end of Return of the King, he's a bit more laid back. He's got he's best friends with a dwarf, which both of them say they wouldn't do. So that's a whole character arc. Hobbit's a prequel, which means he's gone back to that cocky, snide, not caring sort of attitude, and it kind of just puts off Legolas' character a little bit.
True.
And
that's kind of true.
Like you said, they put it in there because for purposes, and it's just like there's no need for it. If you take him away and actually focused on the characters a bit more, then maybe you would have had a better overview, because I don't even remember half of the character building scenes because they didn't give them enough attention.
No,
there's
only
so many dwarfs in it. I couldn't really remember the main one.
Well, he was the only one that it mattered, and it was, and the story of the Hobbit is very similar to the Lord of the Rings. It's just like a smaller scale. Because when J.R.R. Tolkien was writing the books, he actually wrote Hobbit first, but he couldn't get it published. So then he wrote Lord of the Rings. So he took a lot of the stuff that he had in the Hobbit, because I don't know if he knew if he was ever going to publish it or not. So, because both are stories about kings who don't want to be kings, but it's their legacy, a journey to a MacGuffin, and like it's similar, and it on purpose. But then later he was able to publish The Hobbit, but yeah, it was just a bland interpretation of. I did try to read The Hobbit once, and it is really dry though too. I think I lasted like half of the first chapter. But yeah, but Peter Jackson was able to with Lord of the Rings, even in The Hobbit, to make it less dry than the source material. But most of that's just in the way that J.R.R. Tolkien explained like characters. It's not necessarily what happened in the book, just how things were being explained. So visually, it works better than on paper. Even though it works good.
It may be dry, but his world building is very, very good. If you think about it's little details, isn't it? Like the sword that glows when it's around orcs, that gives the frail hobbits that don't explore anything, they stay in their little villages and stuff, something to use. And and in the first trilogy, I think it was actually used pretty well done. And it's little details like the big spider thing, and the way that in the movie it does look rather creepy, and you can see the fear in Frodo that he wants to get out, and then when he gets stuck and when he gets stabbed, and it does have this dramatic, not horror, it's more just haunting sort of esque to it, but in the book it's kind of hard to read through that,
unless you're like a Tolkien head.
Yep.
But yeah, he does a brilliant job of, because he did. It's not just the book. Like he did build a world. He created a map of Middle Earth. he created languages, like Elfin. He like made a whole language because I think he was a
Yeah, that's
linguist.
it, yeah.
I want to say he was a linguist, so he was able to understand how languages work to actually
Yep.
make a language that is coherent and cohesive and can be an actual language. Unlike a lot of like made up languages in sci-fi, where it's just
Yeah.
we'll just make up some nonsense and this is what it says.
Yep.
Like everything is like it's got an alphabet, it's got a grammar, and
Yeah, you like people have learned how to talk Elvish from Lord of
Yeah.
the Rings, you know.
yeah,
And like he also managed to build several, you got humans, you've got elves, you've got dwarves, hobbits, orcs, there's multiple different like factions here, and he did a really good job making sure each one had, even if it's just a slither, each one had some limelight. And the I think the films did a good job at portraying that.
yeah, it's and I don't think you'd have a lot of the fantasy stuff that you have now if it wasn't for Lord of the Rings, not just in like
yeah,
movies
definitely.
or books, but even like video games, like Warcraft, or stuff like that. I think a lot of those took a lot of major influence on that medieval inspiration and
Yep.
the fantasy, those fantasy
Yeah, of
elements of
course.
Lord of the Rings.
And when it comes to making the impact, I think Lord of the Rings, maybe not. I don't know about the Hobbits, take the way them, but I think for the original trilogy, it's one of those. It's one of those trilogies that if someone said, "Oh, let's remake Lord of the Rings," so many people are not
no,
going to be happy
it's
with
not.
that. So many people are going to kick up a fuss.
But that happens though. I think every time
It'll happen
somebody
eventually. It'll happen eventually.
yeah, it might be in like
But
100 years.
yeah,
But
that's right.
who knows?
We won't
Well,
be around then.
they are. So Amazon is coming out with Lord of the Rings show.
Yes.
So I forgot. I think it's just called the Ring of Power. So I
Yeah.
think it takes place like when around the time that Saruman had the rings, from maybe that or maybe time after.
Yeah, I think
Not
they
really quite
said
sure.
that it's before
The
Gollum
ring.
had it.
Okay.
So it's gonna be like a prequel to Hobbit.
Well, it
We're gonna have
depends
a
because
prequel.
Gollum got it while it was like a few thousand years just sitting in that lake. So
Yeah, that's true.
so it's gonna be in
Yeah,
that time frame. So it's gonna be
but I am curious to see what they do with it, though. I think it's gonna be one of those shows that, because it's not Lord of the Rings, but it's in the world, and that's one of the things
Yeah.
I like about Lord of the Rings is the world building. So I'll definitely give it a go, and it may be good for
and it's new. It's not there's no books on it like there was with Hobbit or
Yeah,
Lord of the
true.
Rings. So because a lot of times with that, when it comes to movies based off books, a lot of the fans of the books expect the movies to be just like the books, and there's always these some issues with some of the fandom when it comes to that. You get that a lot of in comic books, but kind of not as much now. With some things, Marvel and DC, Marvel you kind of do, but like with things like The Boys or The Walking Dead, they purposely go off of the comics, away from the comics, because they really don't know how long they can do the shows, and they don't want you to know what's going to happen. So
Yeah.
So they
See, like with that, like adaptations and stuff, I kind of see both sides, because there's some things, especially with books, I'm like, well, hang on a minute, certain scenes should have been like, this or that or the other. There's certain decisions you should have made, but I also understand that some things you can't do. Some things are going to take longer to do. Some things are just really awkward. Some things actors actually refuse to do certain scenes, or certain stuff like that. They do, and they're allowed to refuse to do certain scenes. And especially with comic books, you are correct. Certain things, like they want to drift away. And there's so many arguments I've had with people about adaptations, and Walking Dead's actually my argument, because Daryl is one of the most fan favorite character. He's not in the comic books. He's not in them. That's why I bring up with people. Daryl's not in the comic books, yet you love him. And with this new Lord of the Rings TV show that's coming out, like you said, it's not based off anything, so it's all gonna be original ideas, and that's one thing I like about
Original
it. Is it's gonna be all
characters,
original.
yeah. Yeah. I do like my dad. He's a big reader. So like a lot of that stuff is important to him, especially with comic books, because he knows the comic books for the most part until like 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and so he expects his comic book movies to be just like the comics, and so more times than not he doesn't like it. Because that's not what the character did in the comics.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you got to do something different. Then why make the movie?
Yeah, see, certain things that, like, the biggest argument is really that you could just play it off as it's a different universe when it comes to superhero stuff,
which
Marvel,
they did,
DC especially.
Yeah.
Marvel
turned
did.
it into its own universe.
Yeah, there's certain things that I'm not like. There's certain. It's kind of like a black and white area, because there's certain things that it's like, it should be this way or it shouldn't be that way. Like Miss Marvel, she's not Inhuman. That actually bugs me, because that's actually one of the biggest plot points of Miss Marvel, is that she's an Inhuman. But
yes
they're not
and no,
that
but
in
if
Marvel.
you got to watch the season to the end. You have to watch
true.
the season to the end.
But like with certain decisions, like, okay, I'm just gonna put a random one in Doctor Strange, the first one, the Ancient One's a woman. It's not an old dude with a really light weight. That's perfectly fine. I think she was actually awesome as the Ancient One. I actually really liked her. Little things like that, it doesn't matter. It's good to see a bit of diversity and a bit of change every now and then. It's when once a comic book's printed and it's sold, it can't be changed unless they redo the storyline. Where a movie, it's different to what you're reading, so it's good. With some books, it's different, but with comic books, it's nice.
Yeah, but books is different because you have one source for it all.
Yep.
But movie, you have 2 hours, and if you put as much content of the movie from the book, you might get a 10-hour movie. So
that's why
you
like
can't have everything.
That's why like some books have 2-part films, like Hunger Games. The last book had 2 movies. Harry Potter, the last book, had 2 movies.
Twilight,
etc. Yeah, Twilight, etc.
Yeah, but with comic books have been going on since 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. And so to be able to be exact,
there's so many adaptations. Let's use Marvel. You've got the main continuity, you've got the Ultimate Universe, you've got whatever. So the fact that the movies are slightly different, you can just use the whole universe argument and go, well, technically, doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't.
But
it's entertainment. Like if the movie is entertaining, like I don't know as much about the comic book characters, because most of the MCU are characters I don't really know much about. Like even when it started, when it was Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, I didn't know or care about those characters. So I was able to kind of, have fresher eyes. I knew who their Hulk was. I knew who they were. I just didn't care for them. So I think the Hulk's been given a bad shake, but here and there. But like with the Iron Man 3, everybody was in uproar about the Mandarin. And turned out like it wasn't the Mandarin. It was just an actor, Ben Kingsley's character. Most people were like, again, I don't know much about the comics, so like it didn't bother me. I thought it was kind of comical, and I enjoyed it. But I did like that they reverse tracked and said that
they
just
retconned it.
Yeah, they didn't necessarily retcon. They were just like they were just pretending to be the five.
They rounded off that storyline basically, didn't they?
Yeah. So they turned it to where it should have been in the first place. But I still found it entertaining. The way Ben Kingsley does that character, and I love that he showed up again in Shang-Chi.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
so, I didn't expect that.
I'm actually the only thing I haven't seen is Miss Marvel, and I'm a big comic book nerd. I'm a big bookworm, and I'm currently watching everything again with my mother and my stepmother. They're complete noobs to everything. They know certain characters. My mum's read one or maybe two comic books, but they're complete noobs. We're currently going through What If, so that's where we are now. So we've got a few things to catch up on. That's a good one. And the best thing, like they do watch and they enjoy it, but there is every now and then my mum will just turn to me and go, right, explain that to me, like comic book wise, because she doesn't get anything. It's great. And like with Lord of the Rings, it's harder because again I haven't read the books. They're kind of hard to read, to be fair. But I'm glad I haven't read them because I don't want to ruin that for myself, because I'll know that I'll read the books and I'll go, hang on a minute, how come that wasn't in the film? That would have made more sense, and I'm gonna break that barrier that I've got for myself. So I'm never gonna read the books.
You can always just watch YouTube videos on the difference between, and then just say, oh, okay. But anywho, we got to.
I think he did a really good job on. He had 3 movies, all extended versions as well, and that's like 9 hours altogether if you really think about it.
Well, with extended, it's film. Like 11 hours.
Oh, there you go. And so that's 11 hours worth of film. That's a lot of stuff. Set of books. So I'm gonna take it. And he did a really good job on the world building. He had several storylines to do. All of them he jumped back to quite nicely and stuff. Nothing seemed rushed or there's no scene where you're halfway through the scene, it cuts to another person, you're like, oh really? Like you're okay with it jumping between the 3 characters, 3 sets of characters happily. Even Pippin and Merry, who don't really have much of a dramatic storyline, even it was nice to see them after a couple minutes of watching everyone else, especially when their story picks up with the tree people and they help them out and stuff. It was pleasant to jump from something dramatic and like war and all this stuff to, oh wait, look, this is actually like a bit of a fresh air that these 2 comic book like characters are doing something. It was nice.
Yeah. Well, I think it was like, yeah, I think it was a passion project of Peter Jackson, because before Lord of the Rings, he did a lot of like more low budget stuff. Like he did a movie called like Bad Taste, which is like a really low budget horror movie. I think he did Flatliners. I want to say he did Flatliners, and then maybe like one other really low budget movie before he did Lord of the Rings, and then that like turned him into like a big budget. Like one of the powerhouses in movies. But so we're going on some good time, so we need to close this episode. So Ty, just would you let everybody know like what projects you're working on, where they can find you, and what else is going on with Ty?
So you can find me on YouTube at Tai Tiger. I do gaming and reaction videos there. I'm on TikTok at Tai Tiger 77. That's just where I'm all geek stuff. I do movies. I talk about TV shows, anything geeky or nerdy. You can find me there. And at the moment, I'm working on my own audiobook stuff, very very similar to Cosplay Dude 637 at Tiger Tales on YouTube, and it should be on Spotify at some point soon.
Yeah, you're already 3 episodes into Tiger Tales.
Yes, I am. Yeah, 4th one should be out about Tuesday or Wednesday next week. So
by the time this comes out, the 4th one might already be out.
Should be, yeah.
Yes.
Thereabouts.
Okay, so check them out there, and thank you again, Ty, for coming on. We do have to, because one thing I always forget is to mention our host, which is Zio the Hero. We're on the Zio the Hero network, and I would be remiss if I didn't actually give them the props that they need, because I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for them. So
yeah, of course.
So check out Zio the Hero. Wherever you find our podcast, on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, all the socials, which there'll be a promo right after this. But thank you again, Ty, for coming on. And
thank you.
I always end the show with this. It's from the immortal words of Zordon. May the power protect you.
If you enjoy what you're listening to from the Baker Ranger, and all his technical problems, but sometimes they're mine because I mute the site or something,
Why is it on fire? Why is it on fire? It shouldn't be on fire. Why is it on
I
fire?
don't know, but you might like
Who
to
don't
see
even want it on
his other
fire?
stuff on the Zero to Hero network. Also, catch him on YouTube and Facebook
Okay,
to see
wait.
his
How
weekly
do you want
Nerdiverses,
it back
and
in?
also
No,
see what else he's coming out with in the near future.
I swear to Jeebus!